Hi, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here today, and also a pleasure or privilege really to introduce to you what we have been doing in Estonia for the past 20 years in terms of digitalization. We get asked very often, how is it that such a small country can be a leader in digitalization globally? And I'm going to introduce you a couple of the principles that we have followed over the past 2 decades, and also what we have been doing, what we are doing currently, what we're planning to do, and also how it all fits together. So first of all, maybe a brief introduction about Estonia, because I won't even assume that everybody knows where we are or what we are. Sometimes when I talk at conferences, people are asking, which company do you represent? And then I'm trying to make them understand that Estonia actually is a country, although we only have 1.3 million people. And this 1.3 million people is actually quite an important number, because if we look at the size of Estonia, which is around 45,000 square kilometers, it means that we have a relatively big country with a relatively small population. This also means that for the government, reaching each and every citizen or resident is extremely difficult. When we restored our independence in the early 90s, we realized that we just lacked the financial resources or any other resources, let's say mineral resources, to exploit quickly, to have the financial solutions or financial means to actually keep up the country in the what we call old-fashioned or analog way. So we had to find an opportunity how to be able to make sure that we as a government are able to provide services to everybody regardless of where they live. And luckily at that same time, globally, we saw certain protocols being developed, like the TCP/IP protocols, or other words, the internet. And we thought, well, if the internet is now something that can be everywhere and you can exchange data over the internet, then why not try to set up a society where we make sure that everybody has access to the internet and therefore they have access to government services. So essentially, we have come to a situation where today we can say that every smartphone that you hold, every laptop, every tablet, every PC that you have essentially has become a government office for you. Today, nearly all Estonian government services are accessible over the internet. There were a couple of things that you couldn't do online, like real estate transactions or marriage and divorce, up until recently, but now during the COVID-19 outbreak, we also have started moving those online as well, if not fully, then at least parts of it. So that has been a very, very important aspect for us, being able to reach our citizens. Now, the second aspect that I would like to talk about is when we talk about digital transformation or digital development, then for us, it has been very clear that this is not about technology. Technology is widely available globally, everywhere. There are a lot of great companies. There's always money there to implement, even to start small and start small projects. But the main aspect for us that has been extremely important is to have a very persistent leadership that supports digital transformation. And regardless of the prime minister that we have, regardless of the president that we have, or the parliament that we have, over the past 25 or so years, we have seen a continuous support towards digitalization, which has actually helped us now to become something that one might call the most digital society in the world. There are also some other things that I would like to bring out very briefly. So we started in the early to mid 90s or mid to late 90s with a very important aspects of digitalization, which was education. We realized quite quickly that it is not enough to provide digital services, or back then we really called them e-services, electronic services, if your citizens or the users do not know how to use them. So already in the late 90s, we made sure that every school has a computer class, and also all of the more vulnerable members of the society. We're talking about the elderly, the ones that have accessibility issues, are able to learn how to use basic things like how to turn on a computer, how to type something, how to print something, how to apply for something. Today, this has completely switched over to educating about cyber hygiene, something that we call in terms of not responding to certain emails which come from dodgy locations, or not opening every attachment on emails, or opening links, or downloading software that you're not familiar with, or you're not familiar with the source at least. So trying to make people understand that keeping cyber security in the whole nation is not only a thing that the government has to do, which we're doing, but also it's something that the whole society needs to be part of. And now I'm trying to maybe quickly ease in also where the financial sector comes in here, because in our case, when we talk about digitalization in Estonia, it always has been a public-private partnership. Yes, the government has been the initiator of change. We have come up with certain policies, legal frameworks to make sure that the environment is suitable for transformation or development. But at the same time, we were very conscious about the fact that if you change something, and you change something in the society fundamentally, it will be difficult to make individuals go along with it. So when we introduced digital signatures and digital identity in 2001, we were quite conscious about it, that we need to add some value to the card itself. So back then, the digital ID was just a card. Now it can be mobile ID also, or smart ID. But back then it was a card, and so that people would feel that this is actually something more valuable to them than just something that you can use to scrape ice off the windshield of your car. We realized that we have to engage the private sector. And actually the banks at that time were very supportive of this, partly because now the government had provided a digital identity which could be used both by the public and private sector, which meant that they didn't have to develop their own. But secondly, they also saw that since the legislation that we adopted, which made the ID card mandatory for everybody that is older than 15 years, it meant that the critical mass of users was already there that had a well distributed means of digital identification, which meant that now they were actually eager to provide digital services or e-services. We've seen around the world in different places that also similar digital identification schemes are being adopted, but when the legislation doesn't make it mandatory, then at the same time people don't maybe want to get it because they don't understand it, or they have been used to the old ways that they've been using the services before. So in our case, although we made it mandatory, we also didn't want to sound like the government is forcing something upon the citizens, and therefore actually there's no punishment in the legislation. So luckily Estonians are law-abiding citizens, and they get it because the law says so, but at the same time there is no punishment if they don't. And this actually got us out from the vicious circle of not having enough users to want to build services, or not having enough services so that the users would get bored. This of course grew from online banking. I believe the year was 1996 when Estonians started using online banking. So you can see it's been quite a while, over 2 decades, 2.5 decades nearly, as we've used it. And today, I'd say close to 100% of all transactions are digital, electronic transactions between companies, between people and companies, and also for the government. And now if we take it a step further, actually the Estonian government has adopted legislation, which means that when you want to send invoices to the government, they can only be electronic invoices or invoices. Now, this all has been possible because we've also followed certain principles. One of the principles that we have followed is that we should aim towards building platforms. So not that every sector, every company, every institution builds their own digital solution and tries to make them interoperable, rather than we provide from the government side these platforms. So we can consider even the digital identity platform, digital signatures. Another platform that is vital for having an interoperable digital infrastructure is a data exchange layer. Ours is called X-Road. And what X-Road enables us is, in a distributed way, we can link up different institutions from public and private sector, and they can provide services. I believe there are over 2,600 digital services being provided daily for our users or citizens and residents. So the other maybe core principle that we have is the once only principle. So in order to actually make institutions and the private sector to use our digital infrastructure and the X-Road, we have adopted legislation which means that the data can only be collected once from the user, which means if a government institution has already received information from the citizen, they're not allowed to bother the citizen with the same question again. They have to exchange information. This same goes to the private sector. If you want to be part of the digital information system of Estonia, then you cannot duplicate the databases. It doesn't mean that we don't have backups, or actually even backups outside of our country. We are known to be the first country in the world to have actually a data embassy in Luxembourg. But it means that you, on a daily basis, we don't have two different institutions that collect the same information or keep it. The second core principle for us has been digital by default. So when we develop services, we always aim to see how we can make them first and foremost digital, how documents or data actually can be exchanged digitally. And if documents are not needed to exchange data, then we just, or information, we just exchange data. I think one of the most surprising parts for a lot of people has been that even the Estonian Tax and Customs Board is that has said that we don't need declarations, we need data. And if you can give us information automatically, we don't need you to declare anything. And that has been said to the individuals as well to the companies. Then another aspect that we really followed over the years is transparency by design. So all data exchanges, is it to person-to-machine, machine-to-machine communication, data at rest or log files, are independent and fully accountable with timestamping and KSI blockchain deployed in Estonian government. So everything can be mathematically proven, and nobody can rewrite history in that sense. And that's a very, very important aspect for us, having this certainty that not only outsiders can penetrate the system and do something that we wouldn't know about, but actually not the system administrators or the government cannot manipulate either. And this also generates trust, and trust is one of the vital components to have when you really are building a digital society and you want people to be engaged. And then there is this open environment. So we have been very firm believers of open source technology and also sharing our knowledge and learning from others and sharing different reusable components. This also has come very handy now when we're talking about our AI developments. Estonia has made development of AI national priority. And the easiest or way to say it why is that we always look around the world, and if we see a new emerging technology, we like to test with it. We like to maybe risk a bit, have small projects. If they fail, we regroup, we try to fix them. If they work, we scale them up. So our logic has always been that if you deliver something and if you fail, at least do it fast and do it on a small scale, and then you can scale up later on. And quite frankly, I mean, when we compare now Estonia and, for example, India, and one might say that, you know, you have it quite easy in a sense that you only have 1.3 million people. We in India have 1.3 billion, I believe, or perhaps even more. It's far more difficult to scale up than my response to that, even if it sounds a bit obnoxious, is that you know, in the time of cloud computing, scalability is never an issue. It's all about perseverance and actually following through and going through with good ideas that you already have, which you do have, and I know that for a fact. So the core aspect here is that we've had a very persistent leadership. We've seen technology as an opportunity to revisit the old-fashioned ways that we've done, and we've also very much focused on certain principles that have helped us to to get to the situation where we are today. And maybe to wrap it up, really, we see digitalization as not a chore or something that needs to be done, something that is difficult or is a burden for the government. We see it as a once-of-a-lifetime opportunity to rethink the whole structure of service delivery and how to provide better services for our citizens, because this is what not only are they expecting, this is also what they are entitled to. And essentially, we see it as an opportunity to become a better government, more efficient government, but also a government that takes care of the citizens in a way that starts providing proactive services, giving people the opportunity to receive benefits when they are entitled to, but they don't know that they're entitled to, giving them the opportunity to access the government in a more convenient way, like a virtual assistant, for example, in the future, and so on. So we see it as an opportunity, and I'm tremendously happy that I've had the opportunity today also to share this with you. Thank you.